Good evening, friends. Today I'm here to cover another major issue for mains examination. The issue is issues related to poverty and hunger. If we look at past year questions, you would see that from 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, every year they had asked a question either on poverty or hunger, or poverty and hunger combined together. But after that, in 2021 and 2022, they haven't. So there are very high chances that in 2023 we get a question on this particular issue, on the issue of poverty and hunger. So first, before we jump into the various topics that we'll be covering, let us quickly look at the questions that have been asked. Achha, by the way, the PDF notes, these notes are available in the description of this video. You'll be, if you're watching it on YouTube, in the YouTube there's a link of Telegram given, Telegram channel. On that Telegram channel at 5 PM today, what is the date? What is the date today? 7th? Today on 7th of September at 5 PM I have already uploaded the notes, so you can download the PDF from the Telegram channel. It's our current affairs Telegram channel. So before we go to the study of topics, let us quickly look at the questions that have been asked. That will give us an understanding of the broad area UPSC have been interested in over the last 10 years, and we would ensure that other than covering the basics and other aspects, these particular areas are also carefully covered. Okay, so first question, that 2020 mains mein the question that was asked was, incidence and intensity of poverty are more important in determining poverty, based on income alone. In this context, analyze the latest United Nations multidimensional poverty index. So UN had come up with a multidimensional poverty index. It is saying, the question was about, rather than measuring poverty only on the basis of income, that was the trend in India, the consumption expenditure, rather than calculating, measuring poverty only on the basis of expenditure. So in India, what we used to do, we used to look at the consumption expenditure of citizens. If consumption expenditure is high, situation is good. But if someone is not able to spend money on consumption, enough money on consumption, it was considered that the person is poor. So rather than going for that measure of poverty, which is only expenditure based method, why, like the question is about analyzing how significant the multi-dimensional poverty index is. That is, multi-dimensional poverty may we cover, other than expenditure aspect, we cover health, education and various other things like access to electricity, access to banking, etc. How effective is this? The question was about that. So we had to analyze the report and the key aspects of the report. This report has again been published in July this year. So we would look at the key highlights of the report also. Let's go to the second question. It was asked in mains 2019. There's a growing divergence in the relationship between poverty and hunger. Poverty and hunger mein there's a growing divergence. Like the hunger is increasing, but poverty is not increasing that much. That divergence. In India, the shrinking of social expenditure by the government is forcing the poor to spend more on non-food essential items, squeezing their food budget. Because government is spending less money on social expenditure, what is happening is, because government is not spending enough on social expenditure, citizens themselves are have to spend that money from their pocket. When they are spending the money on health, on education more than what they used to do earlier, the money available for food is reducing, and thus the divergence. This is something that you have to elucidate. Here you may have to give some examples as well. Then in 2018 they had asked a question, how far do you agree with the view that the focus on lack of availability of food as the main cause of hunger takes the attention away from ineffective human development policies? So when we are focusing on hunger, and when we focus only on lack of availability of food, and we try to fight hunger by just ensuring that enough food is available, it diverts us from a comprehensive approach where other dimensions like health, education are ignored. This is something that was asked India. How far do you agree with this particular view? When you are focusing a lot on lack of availability of food as cause of hunger, then your attention from other aspects is diverted. तो ये देखोगे ये थोड़ा सा ना is related to multi-dimensional poverty index वाले क्वेश्चन से ही कि how significant is multi-dimensional poverty index. In multi-dimensional poverty index you measure poverty not only on the basis of consumption expenditure but on a lot of other aspects. In the same way, when you are measuring hunger, and to fight hunger, when you are only focusing on ensuring enough food is available, you miss several other aspects like mother's health, child's health, the education facilities available, the sanitation facilities available. All those things are also crucial to ensure that malnourishment doesn't occur. So the question, this particular question has been about that, how far do you agree, or how far do you agree with this particular view. Then in 2017 they had asked two questions. First, hunger and poverty are the biggest challenge for good governance in India. Good governance in India still today. Evaluate how far successive governments have progressed in dealing with these humongous problem. So how far have we succeeded over the years? Has various governments succeeded in dealing with the problem of hunger and poverty, and suggest measure for improvement. तो general question कि hunger and poverty के लिए हमने अभी तक क्या-क्या किया है? How successful have we been? And what more needs to be done? A general standard question related to hunger and poverty. Then in 2017 they had also asked a question: poverty alleviation program in India remain mere showpiece until and unless they are backed by political will. So intro में they expect you to explain कि how various poverty alleviation program are not very effective without strong political will. Discuss with reference to performance of the major poverty alleviation program in India. Then in 2015 they had asked a question: though there have been several different estimates of poverty in India, all indicate reduction in poverty level over time. Do you agree? Over the years there have been several different estimates of poverty. There have been different methods of measuring poverty, but all of them are showing that poverty is reducing in India. Do you agree with that view? तो आप अपना argument देंगे. If you are agreeing, you will give reason कि see, as per this method also, as per this method also, as per multi-dimensional poverty index also, as per consumption expenditure method also, as per various reports by UNICEF, etc. also, the poverty situation in India is reducing. Critically examine with reference to urban and rural poverty indicators. So urban poverty और rural poverty के indicators क्या होते हैं and how we have improved upon them. Keeping this factor in mind, you have to critically analyze if the poverty situation in the country has gone down. So what you would see is that over the years, this is one of the favorite topics on which UPSC has asked mostly analytical question. They haven't specifically gone into schemes, programs, but rather than how effective those schemes, programs have been, they've gone into this aspect. Similarly, they're not talking about individual schemes to fight hunger and poverty. Therefore, you do not have to worry about what are the provisions for Food Security Act or PDS and all. वो सब GS3 में हमने पढ़ा है. Here you have to worry about the effectiveness of them. What are the various mechanisms? What are the key challenges there? And how do we improve upon that? Okay, so why I wanted to cover these questions before starting to teach you, because through these questions we'll understand the key areas that we have to focus upon. Sometimes when we do not analyze past year questions, we end up learning a lot of factual thing. You would see that UPSC has not asked a lot of facts. UPSC has not asked a lot of data related questions. Rather, analyze, critically analyze, what is your opinion? Those kind of questions have been asked. Okay, so let us start this lecture. Here we will have 6-7 different topics. We would try to cover it in one video only, but if that video gets lengthy, we'll divide the video into 2 parts and upload it on the YouTube. Again, before I start the session, the material, this PDF is available in the description of this YouTube channel. You can take it from there. Okay, so let's start with poverty. What is poverty? When we say that India में बहुत सारे लोग are living in poverty, what is meant by that? It means that there are people living under poverty means there are people who are not able to afford the basic needs of life. who are not able to ensure good food, good shelter, good clothing, good health facilities, enough basic health facilities, basic food, basic shelter. Now, measurement of poverty can vary from country to country, and within a country also over the period, the method by which poverty is calculated can vary, but in general, poverty means a person or community lacking the financial resources essential for a minimum standard of living. Now, what is the poverty situation in India? How many people are there who are facing these problems? So, if we look at the time of independence, more than 80% of country's population was living in extreme poverty. That is, they were not able to ensure availability of basic food for themselves. They were not able to ensure availability of good health facilities for themselves. They were not able to ensure good education facility. They were not able to ensure good quality houses for them. More than 80% of the country. Imagine this. Only 2 out of 10 people were having okay basic facilities available for them. 8 out of 10 were not having that. From that situation, if we come to the latest report on National Multidimensional Poverty Index released by Niti Aayog, as per this report, what has happened? Only 15% of India's population is living under poverty now. Less than 15%. It is 14.9 something. We'll look at the exact data. We'll look at this report in detail. But look at the situation, how situation has changed. From more than 80% of the country's population living below extreme poverty to only less than 15% of the population. So we have progressed a lot. But what was the reason? What was the reason? And in fact, some of those reasons are valid today. Why even now more than 15% of India's population is living under poverty? And considering that we have the largest population in the world, 15% of the population living under poverty makes it around 25 crore people living under poverty. Why is it that so many people are still living under poverty? तो यहाँ पे कुछ historical reasons हैं और कुछ current reasons भी हैं. Why so much poverty? पहला है historical factor, the colonial rule. Colonial rule changed this country from one of the richest country, one of the most well-off country to one of the poorest country in the world. Colonial rule led to deindustrialization, it led to a lack of development of modern industries and India falling behind. That was the core reason. That is why at the time of independence, more than 80% of the country's population is living under poverty. Then comes rapidly rising population. Governments over the period took a number of steps to fight poverty, but population boom led to those steps not being enough. Then we had agricultural problems. Our agricultural productivity is on the lower side, and because so many people are engaged in agriculture, when the productivity is on the lower side, overall poverty situation remains very high. Unemployment is still a huge problem. In fact, as per PLFS by NSO, the unemployment had reached around 45 year high in 2017-18. Then we had, because we are a developing country, there was shortage of capital. There was also a lack of entrepreneurship within the country, entrepreneurship skills within the country. New jobs, new opportunities were not getting created. There were some social factors also. In fact, these social factors are valid even today. Caste-based discrimination, gender-based discrimination, it led to weaker sections not being able to perform to their best extent. When girls are not able to get proper education, proper skilling opportunities, their ability to contribute to the economy and contribute for themselves reduces. Similarly, because of caste discrimination, because of other such factors, when some communities are not able to get good access to health facilities, good access to education facilities, their overall ability to fight poverty, their overall ability to get good opportunities reduces. Then in recent years, we have also seen increased inequalities. A small percentage of India's population has control over most of the resources. So this increasing inequality leads to the lower strata of the society remaining lower and rich becoming the richer. So in terms of PPP, purchasing power parity, India is already the third largest economy in the world. But even then, we have 15% of our total population. 15% of the total population is more than 20 crores of India's population living under extreme poverty. Among the largest economy in the world, if this is happening, it shows that there is huge inequality. And with advancement in science and technology, with automation, with more robotics, with more AI, with more machine learning coming into play, various jobs at the lower strata would become redundant. People who are living in poverty would find it more difficult to come out of it, whereas the rich people using the latest technologies would further be able to do well. That may again become a factor for increasing inequality and increasing poverty in the country. And then COVID-19 pandemic impacted the poorest section the most. IT companies, banks, the white collar jobs, they were able to continue from work from home. It is the poorer section of the society, the rickshaw pullers, the sweepers, the people working in unorganized sector. They were the ones who suffered the most. The construction workers, they were the ones who suffered the most. And during COVID-19, a lot of lower middle class population fell into the trap of poverty. It was not only because of lack of work opportunities, because sometimes they had to spend a lot of the money they had to spend a lot of out-of-pocket expenditure for various health issues that they were facing. So because of these factors, because of these broad factors, the poverty situation continues in the country. Now let's talk about what is the impact. Impact to ek to very easy. One thing is very easy to understand, that they are unable to fulfill their basic needs. People who are living in poverty, they face housing challenges, they face nourishment challenges, they face health and educational opportunities related challenges. Not only do they face these challenges, they also face social discrimination in society. People living under poverty, they are treated, or they are harassed, they are humiliated, they are discriminated in every walk of life. They have to face challenges of illiteracy and hostility of powerful. So poverty is not only about economic poverty, but it's also about inequality that they face. Then poverty may also lead to development of what is called a subculture of poverty. Oscar Lewis says that this subculture of poverty makes poor people remain poor. So for generations, if you're living in poverty, there would be some hindrances, some cultural hindrances, some behavioral hindrances created, which will prohibit you from getting out of this trap. And therefore we need to fight poverty. There are other challenges also which may be created by poverty. For example, chances of radicalization and criminalization is high when you do not have anything to lose. At those times when in your family you're not getting basic food, what would happen? You would be ready to do criminal activity. The chances that someone will radicalize you, someone will criminalize you here would be higher. Similarly, economic growth also suffers when there is a lot of poverty in the country. Why? Middle class is generally the biggest consumer. The consumption pattern of middle class is very high. When there is a lot of people who do not have enough income, their buying powers would be very less. When their buying power would be very less, their contribution to economy would be less. Not only this, like we should not look at people below poverty line only as buyers, कि अगर उनका income increase होता है तो there will be more buying and economy will grow. Also understand that their ability to contribute to economy at individual level also goes down. A person who is not getting good education, who is not able to get good food, who is not able to get good health facilities, this person's contribution to overall economic growth would be way below the full potential that this person would have had if all his life requirements were properly taken care of. And then it also hampers India's soft power at international forums. We want a permanent seat at UNSC. Abhi G20 is going on in the country and a lot of preparations are being made for that. Roads have been beautified. All these world leaders from the biggest economies in the world would be coming to India. But sometimes they may ask a question. Yaar, you're showing all these things, you have done, you claim all these developments, but there are so many poor people in the country. If India wants a permanent seat at UNSC, it should be able to find power. It first should ensure that there is enough food for their own people in the country. So, isliye bhi, why is it important to fight poverty? Because we want to deal with, we want to ensure that our soft power, our influence, our geopolitical influence also goes up, and it will grow if there is less poverty, or poverty is very less in the country or is not there in the country. Okay, so now over the years, what have we done to fight poverty? So we said at the time of independence, more than 80% of the country's population was living under poverty. Since then, 3 different kind of strategies have been followed. The first strategy, which was followed in 1950s, was focused on maximization of economic growth. It was believed that as economy grows, as economy booms, the advantages of economic growth will percolate to the lowest strata of the society as well, and this is how we'll be able to fight poverty. But this, so in the initial 5-year plans, you will see there was a lot of focus on agricultural development, there was a lot of focus on industrialization of the country, there was a lot of focus on creating infrastructure for electricity and all. These efforts were taken without directly focusing on poor. So what this led to economic growth in the country, but the belief that it will percolate to the poor was not true. It did not percolate, the benefits of economic growth did not percolate to the poor. In the second stage, we focused on redistribution. When the idea of percolation failed, governments moved towards redistribution. We went for land reforms so that poor people are able to get land. We promoted cooperative farming. We promoted, went for nationalization of big industries. We also went for nationalization of banks, so that when it would be under government control, they will be able to work more for the poor. But even these efforts were unable to reduce poverty sustainably. If you go to the year around 2000, around 50% of India's population was still living under poverty. So then in the third phase, we moved to focused poverty alleviation program. So 1980s ke baad se our focus has been on specifically on the initiatives which will fight poverty. For example, if you look at MG Narega, which was launched in around 2006-07, it has emerged as a landmark scheme to alleviate rural poverty in the country. It has played a very important role. Isi tarah se, over the years, we have Food Security Act, National Food Security Act of 2013. We have Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana, which is ensuring enough food for poorer section in the society. Then there are other efforts like Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, ensuring housing for poor, right to education, ensuring good quality education to the children up to age of 14 years. Then there are various scholarship schemes for weaker sections of the society. There are health facilities, जैसे Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana. It ensures that affordable free medicines are available, treatments are available. Ayushman Bharat के अंदर प्रधानमंत्री जन आरोग्य आयुष्मान भारत के अंदर there's a component which focused on providing free health facilities to around 10 crore families or more than 50 crore population. So all these things are focused on poorer people, ensuring what? Ensuring direct fight against poverty. So in the first phase, what we were doing, we were focused on economic growth. We thought that it would percolate. It did not happen. In the second stage, we changed our pattern. We tried redistribution. तो उसमें हमने लैंड रिफॉर्म किया, उसमें हमने कॉपरेटिव्स को प्रमोट किया, उसमें हमने बैंक्स को नेशनलाइज किया. But eventually, when not a lot of success was achieved on that front, we moved to the third phase, where several schemes, several programs over the years have been launched, which is specifically dealing with poor people and ensuring better facilities for them, better health facilities, better educational facilities, better food facilities, and so on. So what has been the result? यहाँ पे कुछ schemes listed भी हैं, MG नरेगा, PMAY, उज्ज्वला योजना, National Food Security Act. Other than this, some other measures. तो देखो यहाँ पे while we are focusing on poorer people directly, there are some landmark changes which took place in economy. For example, the economic reforms of 1991 ensured liberalization, privatization, globalization, created more opportunities within the country. To promote manufacturing, several initiatives have been taken, जैसे Make in India, Atmanirbhar Bharat, various PLI schemes recently. They have also contributed to increase in the manufacturing sector. There are various skill initiatives like Skill India program. We have created a new Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship. All these things have contributed to the fight against poverty. So what is the situation currently? At the time of independence, more than 80% of country's population was living under poverty. What is the situation today? We'll talk about, first we'll talk about National Multidimensional Poverty Index. This National Multidimensional Poverty Index has been prepared by Niti Aayog, and as per this report, you would see we have lifted 13 crore people out of poverty in the last 5 years. 2015-16 to 2019-21 के बीच में we have lifted 13.5 crore people. In fact, less than 15% of India's population was living under poverty. This number was less than 25% in 2015-16. By 2019-21, as per Niti Aayog's Multidimensional Poverty Index, we have less than 15% of people living under poverty. Similarly, UNDP has also published a report on multidimensional poverty. देखो, ये जो report है, this is National Multidimensional Poverty Index, prepared by Niti Aayog. This report is by United Nations Development Program and an institution under Oxford University. They have created this report, UNDP's Multidimensional Poverty Index, and as per this report also, India has lifted 40 crore people, more than 40 crore people out of poverty between this period. 2005-6 से 2019-21 के बीच में, in these 15 years, we have lifted 41 crore people out of poverty, indicating that a lot of success have been achieved. Now only around, as per this report, only around 15% of India's population is living under poverty. A huge achievement. If a question on poverty comes, these are the latest report. These reports came in July. So these are the latest report, latest number that we have about poverty in India, and this should be conveyed in your answers first. Second, what more needs to be done? देखो, even now 15% of country's population is living under poverty. So what do we do to ensure effective fight against it? First, see, we already have lots of programs. Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana, Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana, Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana. There are lots of initiatives to ensure good quality roads. There are lots of initiatives to ensure good health facilities for poor. What is needed is its improved implementation. We need to improve their implementation. One key thing that can improve its implementation is decentralized planning and decentralized execution. Sometimes a top-down approach is not very effective there if the steps are taken from the ground level. If the planning, designing, implementation is monitored from the ground level, these schemes may become more effective. Second, we also need to provide minimum income for poor and vulnerable. Minimum income, we have to ensure that poorer people, vulnerable people have at least one basic source of income available. It can be in the form of universal basic income, or what we can also do is MG Narega. In rural India, MG Narega is there to ensure livelihood, 100-day livelihood for unskilled workforce. We can even think of increasing it to 150 days. In recent times, COVID-19 के time पे, the demand for MG Narega work increased drastically. But nowadays, the demand for this work is going down as more and more people are able to find other jobs. But people who are not able to find jobs, उनके लिए basic income can be ensured by MG Narega. Then We also need to focus on economic growth. We will generate more employment. We need to focus upon promoting ease of doing business. Economic growth would come when doing business is easy. So we have to simplify regulations. We have to deal with labor reforms. We have to deal with land reforms. We also need to focus on agri growth, because even now more than 50% of country's population is dependent on agriculture. So agri productivity has to go up, agri growth has to happen if we want to ensure better income for our majority of our population. So what can be done? Marketing reform, land leasing reforms. We have already talked about this. In GS3, we have dealt with marketing reforms in great details. In GS3, we also dealt with land leasing reform, contract farming, and how they can contribute to improving the overall productivity in agriculture. Further, we need to reduce dependency of people on agriculture. More than 50% of India's population is dependent on agriculture and allied activities for their primary source of income, but the agriculture's contribution in economy is only agriculture and allied sector together contributes to around 17-18% of India's GDP. It shows that there's a lot of underemployment. A lot of people can be moved out of agriculture, and that is what we need to do. We need to reduce dependency on agriculture. And how can we do that? We need our industries to expand. Rural workforce need to be skilled to serve these industries. Then we also need to fight growing inequality. So total egalitarianism in income and property may not be possible, but tax reforms can be introduced to reduce generation of black money, to reduce benami transfers, deals, etc., so that rich people are paying their taxes, the taxes which are due, and those in the form of social schemes, initiatives can benefit poor people. Economic development wali baat humne kari hai. Then one thing that is also needed is a statistical system independent of state interference. So recently, a lot of criticisms have come in the data published by governments. It is argued that because Ministry of Statistics and Planning is under government control, sometimes data is not, or because they'll have conflict of interest and they are not able to convey the data properly. In the absence of proper data, the fight against poverty gets hampered. So what we also need to do is, one of the key things that will help our fight against hunger and poverty is having proper data. So these are the broad areas that we'll need to focus upon if we want to ensure that India's fight against poverty is very effective. So we are saying that there are various stakeholders, including government, civil society organizations, citizens, who need to move constantly towards a vision of an egalitarian democracy where people can live fulfilling lives instead of remaining mired in notion of minimal reparations or remedies. And for this poverty, we need to eradicate poverty from the country, and all these stakeholders, government, civil society organization and citizens, will need to work together to achieve that goal. Okay, so general issue of poverty. I hope if a question related to this would come, you will be able to handle it effectively. Now let us come to poverty estimation in India. Which are the different methods of estimating poverty in India? Because this method of poverty estimation has evolved over the years. So at the time of independence, we were saying that around more than 80% of India's population was living in poverty. What were the methods used for measuring poverty since then? So first, post-independence period mein, the first estimation, first effect in 1962, Planning Commission formed a working group to estimate poverty, and it said that poverty measurement in rural and urban area should be based on the money that people have. So if someone had ₹20 per year or in rural area and 25 per year per capita per year in urban area, then if someone had less money than this, then someone was earning less money than this per capita, then they were living in poverty. Please note that it was per year number, ₹20 in rural area and ₹25 in urban area. That was estimated by Planning Commission, a working group to estimate poverty formed by Planning Commission in 1962. Later, in 1971, V.M. Dandekar and N. Rath, they made first scientific assessment of poverty estimation in India, and they said that to determine poverty, the expenditure that was necessary to provide 2250 calories per day should be considered. So if a person is able to ensure 20 to 50 calories per day through the expenses that that person is making, then this person is not under poverty. अगर इससे कम है, वो इतना food भी ensure नहीं कर पा रहा है, then this person is living with poverty. Similarly, अलग committee in 1979, it was also tasked by planning commission for proper poverty estimation, and ये जो पुरानी वाली कमेटी थी VM डांडेकर एंड रथ वाली, they had given calorie requirement of 20 to 50 for everyone in the country. They had not differentiated it on the basis of rural area and urban area, but in rural area what happens is the physical requirement is higher, and therefore Alag committee in 1969 formulated a poverty line for rural and urban India based on nutritional requirement: 2400 calories for rural India and 2100 calories for urban India. Later, Lakdawala committee in 1993 was formed to review the methodology of poverty estimation. It recommended consumption expenditure should be calculated based on calorie consumption as earlier. तो जैसे 2400 and 2100 calorie consumption वाला mechanism था, expenditure should be measured in that mechanism, and then there should be state specific poverty line, because in various states various food items are available at different prices, so those aspects should be taken into consideration. Then came Suresh Tendulkar committee, again formed by planning commission. Suresh Tendulkar committee wanted a shift away from calorie consumption based poverty estimation, because they said ki it's not only the amount of food that you eat, there are other kinds of expenditure also needed to ensure that you're not living in poverty. So they moved away from calorie consumption based mechanism, and they also incorporated private expenditure on health, education, etc. Because when you are talking about income per capita, income per day, that entire money is not going for food. There is money also going for health, there is money also going for education. So that's why they moved away from the calorie consumption method and incorporated private expenditure on health and education. They also shifted to mixed reference period mechanism rather than uniform reference period mechanism. Now what is mixed reference period? देखो, uniform reference period में क्या होता है, when you are doing consumption expenditure का census or consumption expenditure का survey, you will go and ask a family कि this month how much did you spend on food, how much did you spend on clothing, how much did you spend on education, etc. Now if for a month you ask for this data, food expenditure may be same, but clothing expenditure for that family may be zero, because उस month में they may not be buying anything, and during festival season they'll buy all the clothes. In the same way, education expenditure are higher at the beginning when admission has to be taken place, when new books have to be bought, right? So every expenditure cannot be calculated on monthly basis. Or you cannot consider the entire year for the same. Therefore, over the years, this uniform reference period has been replaced with mixed reference period and modified mixed reference period. यहाँ पे क्या होता है? You consider the expenditure on monthly basis. In this, you consider some expenditure which are uniform throughout the year on monthly basis, and some on the yearly basis to calculate the real expenditures, because clothing festivals के time ज़्यादा खरीदोगे, education का पूरे year का estimation would be a better aspect. In modified mixed reference period, you have some expenditure measured on weekly basis, some on monthly basis, and some on yearly basis. So Tendulkar committee, which was measuring, which was created to review the methodology of poverty estimation, it said that we have to shift away from calorie consumption mechanism, we have to also incorporate private expenditure on health and education, and we have to shift to mixed reference period mechanism. And it concluded that poverty line in India was rupees 32 per capita per day in urban areas and rupees 27 per capita per day in rural area. So it basically said that if someone is earning rupees 32 per capita per day, someone is able to spend rupees 32 per capita per day, वो spend कर रहे मतलब वो earn भी कर रहे होंगे, then they are not poverty ridden. किसी का एक्सपेंडिचर इससे कम है, 10 इनकम इससे कम है, तो ये poverty ridden होंगे. This is per day per capita. So there is a family of 5. Family of 5 means 32 into 5 is 160 rupees per day, 4800 rupees per month. If their income is less than that, then they are living under poverty. If it's more than that, then they are not living under poverty. But this was criticized hugely. A big controversy had come into play. Everyone was asking ki kya planning commission ke vice chairperson himself can survive in 32 rupees in urban area per day. So government formed another committee called Rangarajan Committee for poverty estimation, and this Rangarajan Committee gave a poverty threshold of rupees 47 a day in urban areas and rupees 32 a day in villages. They said that as per this method, the number of poor in India were 29%. As per this method, as per this estimation, 29% of India's population, around 30% of India's population was living under poverty. But when the new government in 2014 came to power, they junked the C. Rangarajan Committee report. They ignored the C. Rangarajan Committee report क्योंकि इन्होंने income level बढ़ा दिया था poverty में consider करने के लिए. Because of that, 100 million more people, 10 crore more people were brought in the below poverty line category. That was not giving a good picture. So government junked this report and on poverty as it had pegged 100, and they went by this mechanism only, Tendulkar Committee mechanism only. Okay, so now based on Tendulkar Committee mechanism, we estimated poverty way back in 2011-12, or us time consumer expenditure survey was also conducted. This consumer expenditure survey help us estimate how much expenditure are consumers making, and based on that we determine if their expenditure is more than what Tendulkar Committee had suggested, or is it less than that. If it's less than that, then they are living under poverty. But what has happened is, from the last consumer expenditure survey was done in 2011-12. So the last official estimates for poverty is from 2011-12. After that, a consumer expenditure survey was done in 2017-18, but the report was never published. The report was rejected as there were some flaws in it. So we do not have official poverty estimate. If we keep it aside, if we keep multidimensional poverty index aside, which has been recently published by Niti Aayog, officially we do not have poverty numbers based on consumer expenditure survey, which used to be done every 5 years. Abhi ek consumer expenditure survey is going on, but वो 2011-12 के बाद consumer expenditure survey का data हमारे पास नहीं आया है. तो coming to, do we need a consumer based expenditure survey when, or consumer expenditure based poverty estimation? जैसे जो तेंदुलकर कमेटी ने बोला कि अगर आपका इनकम इतना है तो per capita per day, then you are below poverty line. If it's more than that, you are above poverty line. Now we do not have consumer expenditure survey since 2011-12, but we have multidimensional poverty index. Multidimensional poverty index prepared by Niti Aayog uses National Family Health Service data, and based on that, हमने देखा, it has said that less than 15% of India's population is living under poverty in 2019-21 period. So in this scenario, a question comes: do we really need a consumer expenditure survey wala mechanism to estimate poverty? So the question has been answered by various experts. They say that nahi, we need it. While multidimensional poverty index is good, we'll go into the details of multidimensional poverty index in some times. While multidimensional poverty index is good, but there are some limitations, some problems in multidimensional poverty index. अच्छा, we will go into the details of multidimensional poverty index, but अभी briefly समझ लीजिए. देखो, पहले हम poverty कैसे estimate कर रहे थे? By the expenditure method. If you are spending up to this much money every day, then you are not living in poverty. But that is not a good picture. A multi-dimensional approach where not only sometimes what may happen that a household income is very less, but they are getting good health facilities, good educational facilities, good quality food through PDS, and thus the situation is good. They're not living in poverty. So rather than just considering income to decide whether someone is living in poverty or not, may not be the right approach. And therefore United Nations Development Program has also gone for multi-dimensional poverty index, where various other dimensions are taken into consideration to determine whether someone is living above poverty or below poverty. India has also created, indigenized that multi-dimensional poverty index of UNDP. Niti Aayog has indigenized that multi-dimensional poverty index of UNDP and have created its own multi-dimensional poverty index. So now we have that multi-dimensional poverty index, जिसका report अभी publish हुआ, which said that less than 15% of India's population is living under poverty. अगर वो है, तो do we need this consumer expenditure survey based mechanism or income based mechanism to determine poverty? The experts say that yes, we may be needing it for a number of reasons. First, they say that there are several concerns. What are the concerns? There are concerns related to measurability, aggregation across indicators and database which provide the requisite information at reasonably short interval, which is being used in multidimensional poverty index. What they're saying is, first they are saying कि things like child mortality. अब child mortality तो आप family level पे measure नहीं कर सकते. Child mortality is an indicator which is a problem, as if it is using child mortality as an indicator becomes a problem because it is for population groups and not for individual household. तो जब आप मल्टी डायमेंशनल पॉवर्टी इंडेक्स में हेल्थ में एक कंपोनेंट चाइल्ड मोर्टेलिटी का भी रखा है हमने, तो व्हेन यू डू दिस, हाउ आर यू मेजरिंग चाइल्ड मोर्टेलिटी फॉर द फैमिली, राइट? इट्स अ पॉपुलेशन बेस्ड एस्टिमेट. तो measuring multi-dimensional poverty index using things like child mortality may not be that effective. Similarly, aggregation is another problem. Aggregation कैसे? हम जब multi-dimensional poverty index measure कर रहे हैं, हम health, education, living standard, इन सबको अलग-अलग weightage दे रहे हैं. Now health में we have things like child mortality. ऐसे ही living standard में we have things like drinking water. Now they can't be aggregated with other child mortality वाला indicator. They are two diverse things. Then they also say that arbitrary weight has been given to different components. We would see that there are many indicators. There are around 12 indicators in the multidimensional poverty index. How the weights of every indicator was decided to calculate the poverty situation. That is another problem. So that is why multidimensional poverty index, though it should be there, where the authors who were making this criticism were not against multidimensional poverty index. While it should be there, they said that consumer expenditure survey based poverty index is also crucial, is also important, because one, it's easy to understand and measure. Consumer expenditure survey से आप क्या करोगे? You will be measuring how much money different families are spending. And based on that, you will be able to measure simply कि कितने लोग कम पैसे spend कर पा रहे हैं, कितने लोग ज़्यादा पैसे spend कर पा रहे हैं. Then it will also help you do historical comparison easily. Because हमने past में consumer expenditure के base पे poverty measure किया था. So if we stick to if we continue with consumer expenditure based mechanism, we'll also be able to compare how much things have improved. And therefore, while multidimensional poverty index is a good mechanism, consumer expenditure based mechanisms should not be sidelined. So 2011-12 के बाद we do not have consumer expenditure survey and the data associated, and thus we do not have official poverty numbers based on that mechanism. We have official poverty numbers, नीति आयोग द्वारा दिया गया number under multidimensional poverty index. So now what are the problems that we face in estimating poverty? What are the key problems? अगर हम consumer expenditure survey के base पे poverty measure करते हैं, what are the key issues, key challenges we face? First is determining the poverty line basket is a crucial challenge. Like up Tendulkar committee ne when they said कि poverty line इतने रुपए पे रहेगा, it was politicized, it became it was criticized like anything. Why was it criticized? Like 32 rupees 32 per day per capita? This appeared to be a very low number, right? When Rangarajan committee increased that number, government rejected it because it increased the number of people living under poverty by around 10 crores. So what is the poverty line basket? Determining that becomes the first challenge. Second is bringing states on board has also remained a challenge. The current official measures are based on Tendulkar committee's recommendation, but some states suggest that C. Rangarajan method will be a better estimation. Then poverty line has also been very dynamic because of rapid changes in demography, consumption pattern, technology, etc. Like if you go to 2010, not many families were using mobile phones among the poorer category. But when you come to 2021, everyone is using mobile phone. Mobile phone is considered a basic need. So उसका expenditure और वो सारी चीजें भी consider. तो because of changing technology, because of changing consumption pattern, our poverty estimation mechanism has to remain very dynamic as well. But ये challenges तो हैं, but still poverty estimation is very important. We should have poverty estimation. Why is it so? Why we cannot say that अच्छा multidimensional poverty index ने number दे दिया ना, consumer expenditure survey based number भी क्यों चाहिए? या फिर any poverty estimation कि हमारे देश में कितने लोग below poverty रह रहे हैं, उसको estimate करना independently, honestly क्यों जरूरी है? First, to get public opinion to support massive and urgent cash transfers. When on PDS, when on Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, when on MG Narega, so much money is being spent. Sometimes taxpayer question why so many lakhs of crores of rupees over the years have been spent on these things. If they would understand that there are crores of people in the country who are living below poverty, the chances that people would support these schemes would be higher. Second, we also want to ensure honest evaluation of various policies on the basis of whether they met the needs of the majority. That is, हमने इतनी सारी poverty elevation scheme launch कर रखी है. Only when we'll have proper estimation of poverty, we'll be able to determine whether those schemes have been good enough or not. Then holding public representatives more accountable or holding government more accountable. Only when we'll have proper estimation, we'll be able to ask questions from government, what have you done to in our fight, in the country's fight against poverty. And finally, proper poverty estimation also help us to make proper schemes and programs. अगर ज़्यादा लोग poverty में रह रहे हैं तो scheme और program को allocation ज़्यादा देने की जरूरत पड़ेगी. If there are less people living in poverty, then those schemes and programs would require less allocation. ऐसे implementation mechanism will need to change. Right? So proper estimation of poverty is crucial for this purpose. So finally, what do we need? What should be done? Proper estimation should be done. How would proper estimation be done? There are दो चीजों की हम बात करें. एक तो consumer expenditure survey should happen as soon as possible, and that along with multidimensional poverty index, consumer expenditure survey based mechanism for measuring poverty should also be considered. दूसरा, data should be free. No, not free is not the right term. Data should be not interfered with. So we need reliable data provided by independent public bodies, ring fenced from potential political interference. Only then we'll have proper estimation, and after we have proper estimation, we'll be able to make proper schemes, hold government accountable, and implement these schemes more effectively. Poverty estimation का crucialness यहाँ से determine होता है. Okay, so we have done two topics so far. One is in general the question of poverty, and second, estimation, poverty estimation. Over the years, the different methods that have been used for poverty estimation, and more that needs to be dealt with and more that needs to be done for better estimation of poverty. Now we have referred to multidimensional poverty index again and again. Let us quickly come to understand what this multidimensional poverty index is. So देखो, as we were saying, historically poverty estimation, for poverty estimation we had relied on income as sole indicator. If your income is, as Tendulkar committee had said, if your income is more than 32 rupees per day, you are above poverty line. If it's less than 32 rupees per day in urban area, per day per capita, you are below poverty line. This is what Tendulkar committee had said, right? But it was solely on the basis of income. However, global multidimensional poverty index, based on Alkire-Foster methodology, captures overlapping deprivations in health, education and living standard. तो UNDP ने ग्लोबल मल्टीडायमेंशनल पॉवर्टी इंडेक्स प्रिपेयर किया है. इट यूजेस ओवरलैपिंग डिप्राइवेशंस नॉट ओनली ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ इनकम बट ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ द हेल्थ, एजुकेशन एंड लिविंग स्टैंडर्ड कैपेबिलिटीज. इंडिया acknowledges the significance of global multidimensional poverty index under the mandate of global indices for reform and action. So India has an initiative, global indices for reform and action, through which it is trying to ensure that our performance in global indices improve. And therefore India has acknowledged this multidimensional poverty index of UNDP, and Niti Aayog in this context has created an indigenized index for monitoring the performance of states and UTs in addressing multidimensional poverty. तो इंडिया का जो मल्टीडायमेंशनल पावर्टी इंडेक्स है जो नीति आयोग यूज करता है, इट हैज थ्री कंपोनेंट्स: हेल्थ, एजुकेशन एंड स्टैंडर्ड ऑफ लिविंग, एंड ऑल थ्री ऑफ देम हैव बीन गिवन 1/3 वेटेज. तो आप देखोगे हेल्थ में 1/3 वेटेज, हेल्थ को 1/3 वेटेज है, एजुकेशन को 1/3 वेटेज है, स्टैंडर्ड ऑफ लिविंग को 1/3 वेटेज है, एंड हेल्थ इज फर्दर मेजर्ड बाय nutrition, child adolescent mortality and maternal mortality. Similarly, education is measured by years of schooling and school attendance, and standard of living is measured by the cooking fuel, the sanitation facilities, drinking water, housing, electricity, assets and bank account. So they form the component of multidimensional poverty index. If you do not have these facilities, you face those deprivations, and based on those deprivations it would be decided whether you are multidimensionally poor or not, and on that basis we measure कि India में what percentage of people are multidimensionally poor, what percentage of people are not, and what is the intensity of poverty. मतलब देखो, ऐसे समझो कि there is one person who does not have proper nutrition, who जहाँ पे जिस फैमिली में चाइल्ड एडोलेसेंट मोर्टालिटी भी हाई है, मैटरनल हेल्थ इज आल्सो पुअर, इयर्स ऑफ स्कूलिंग इज बैड, स्कूल अटेंडेंस इज आल्सो बैड, एंड ये तो दैट फैमिलीज poverty intensity is much higher, whereas there would be some other family which has some of it, does not have some of it. That family's poverty intensity would be lower. So we also have to consider this in order to understand how much poverty is there in the country. So as per the latest multidimensional poverty index, national multidimensional poverty index prepared by Niti Aayog, what are the numbers? As per this report, there's a steep decline in poverty between 2015 and 2015-16 to 2019-21. आप देखेंगे 2015-16 में population under multidimensional poverty was 24.85, which this number has reduced to 14.97% or less than 15% currently. So currently less than 15% of India's population is living under poverty as per multidimensional poverty index. Then in absolute terms, if we look, then 13.5 crore Indians have escaped poverty in this period. 2015-16 से 2019-21 में around 13.5 crore people have escaped poverty, and अगर COVID अगर नहीं हुआ होता तो this number would have further improved. If we look at poverty intensity, it has also reduced. Poverty intensity was 47.14% in 2015-16. It has reduced to 44.39% in 2019-20. तो जब हम multidimensional poverty index measure करते हैं, it is measured by the population under multidimensional poverty proportion of population under multidimensional poverty and poverty intensity H into A, which comes out to be 0.066 this time, which was 0.117 in 2020-21. तो our overall poverty multidimensional poverty index में हमारा score कम हो गया है, which is a good thing. Poverty index में score ज़्यादा होना is not a good thing. Okay, so there is a steep decline in poverty. This is the first thing. Only less than 15% of India's population is living under poverty. This is the first aspect. Second, poverty reduction has been pretty fast in rural areas. You would see rural areas have seen fastest decline in poverty from 32.59% to 19.28% in the period. In fact, this is a figure that I have taken from the report only. So here you will see that poverty headcount ratio, the percentage of people who are living under poverty has come down from 24.85% to 14.96%. So from less than 25% to less than 15% we have come down to. Similarly, 13.5 crore people have been taken out from poverty. जो SDG target 1.2 है, which is reducing multidimensional poverty by at least half much ahead of 2030, we are on track to achieve this. All 12 indicators have shown improvement. हमने अभी 12 indicators देखे थे, health, education and standard of living के. In all those 12 indicators we have seen improvement, and fastest decline have taken place in rural areas. You would see that in rural area the poverty level was 32.59% in 2015-16, that has come down to 19.28% in 2019-21. Similarly, incidence of poverty has reduced from in urban areas also from 8.65% to 5.27%. Now, intensity of poverty has also gone down. We have spoken about the intensity of poverty. Some states, UP, Bihar, MP, Odisha and Rajasthan, they have recorded the steepest decline in multi-level MPI. Poor. So they are poor states, but they have seen a huge decline in overall poverty situation. And we have seen improvement in nutrition, year of schooling, sanitation, cooking, fuel, and these have played a very important role in improving overall performance. But there are some concerns. So while we have seen improvement on all the 12 indicators, there are some indicators where improvement is not good enough. While improvement has taken place, it's not good enough. For example, in the health category, the 3 indicators, nutrition, child, adolescent mortality, maternal health, they have showed only moderate improvement. Nutritional deprivation was 37% in 2015-16, it has come to 31%. Lack of nutrition, similarly maternal health and deprivation improved from 22.5% to 19.7%, but this improvement is not huge. Similarly, child and adolescent mortality has declined from 2.69% to 2.06%, but abhi bhi bahut decline ho sakta hai. So the point is कि while we have improved on every target, on health wale numbers pe we are not doing well. Similarly, there are other indicators that did not record a significant decline. For example, lack of years of schooling or inadequate access to maternal health services. They have seen less improvement than what should happen. Cooking fuel has seen significant improvement, but even now 44% of India's population is deprived of it. Sanitation numbers have also improved due to Swachh Bharat Abhiyan and all, but still 30% of the population is deprived when it comes to sanitation services. Access to housing was another indicator where progress was marginal. In 2015-16, 46% did not have proper housing facilities. This number has come down to 41%, but even now 41% of country's population does not have proper housing facilities. So a lot still needs to be done. अगर आप state level पे performance देखोगे तो in 2015-16 there were 7 states where less than 10% people were living in poverty. In 2015-16 there were 7 states, Mizoram, Himachal, Punjab, Sikkim, Tamil Nadu, Goa and Kerala, which where less than 10% of the people were living in poverty. This has doubled to 14 states in 2020-21, 19 to 21 wale period mein. And now Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, Haryana, Karnataka, Maharashtra, Manipur and Uttarakhand have also been added to the list. So except for the state of Bihar, there is no state where more than a third of population is living under poverty. In fact, even in Bihar, this number is 33.76%. Slightly more than a third of population is living under poverty, and they have shown a steep decline. This number in 2015-16 was 51.89%. Wahan se they have come to 33.76%, which is a good thing. Okay, now what we see when we look at multidimensional poverty index, first Why multidimensional poverty index is crucial? It's crucial because it's just not focused on expenditure, it's focused on several other aspects. It's much more comprehensive and it gives us a better picture. It's also in sync with the global standards where UNDP is moving towards multidimensional poverty index mechanism. And when we use this mechanism, we see that India is doing well. India is improving. From 25% of India's population living in poverty, we have come down to less than 15% of India's population living in poverty in the 5-6 year period. This is perhaps the best 5-6 years in the history of India in our fight against poverty. But still, within the report only, we have seen that when it comes to health, when it comes to housing facilities, when it comes to sanitation facilities, a lot needs to be done. So as we continue improving on those things, we would see that India's performance in multidimensional poverty index will also keep improving. So in the previous topic, we had talked about what should be done to fight poverty in India. Implementation of various schemes, programs have to improve. We should focus upon that. We have to promote ease of doing business in the country so that there are more employment opportunities, so that there are more economic opportunities, skilling opportunities. We should be focused on that. Social inequality ko bhi fight karna padega if we really want to fight poverty. Like in a society where there's a lot of discrimination on the basis of caste, on the basis of region, on the basis of gender, this will hamper the country's overall growth opportunities, and if growth opportunities are hampered, the fight against poverty will also get hampered. So keeping these factors in mind, if we would go ahead, we would see that by the time next multidimensional poverty index is released, India's performance would have further improved. So this is a big achievement, but with proper implementation of various schemes and programs, with economic reforms, with agricultural reforms, with more skilling opportunities, with more changes in the social level, we can further do well and move towards achieving the sustainable development goal 2, which is about fighting poverty. Okay, so this was National Multidimensional Poverty Index released by Niti Aayog. Isse just pehle was also released Global Multidimensional Poverty Index by United Nations Development Programme and Oxford Poverty and Human Development Initiative. United Nations Development Programme and Oxford Poverty and Human Development Initiative at the University of Oxford have released the Global Multidimensional Poverty Index. What does it say? It says that there are 25 countries, including India, who have successfully halved their global MPI values within 15 years. 2005-6 से 2019-20 के बीच में we have reduced our multi-dimensional poverty index ka value to half, which is a very good thing. There are 25 countries, including India, who have done it. 1.1 billion people out of 6.1 billion people, around 18% of them live in acute multidimensional poverty across 110 countries, and 2 regions, Sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia, contribute to around 5 out of 6 of poor people, and nearly 2/3 of all poor people live in middle income countries. Okay, तो अगर आप इंडिया के बारे में की हाइलाइट्स देखना चाहोगे, India has lifted 415 million people, more 41 crore people out of poverty between 2005-6 to 2019 to 2021 वाला पीरियड. तो अभी हमने इंडिया का नेशनल मल्टी डायमेंशनल पॉवर्टी इंडेक्स देखा था. इट सेड दैट वी हैव लिफ्टेड अराउंड 13 crore people from 2005-6 to 2019-21. If you take a bigger period, 2005-6 to 2019-21 of the global multidimensional poverty index, we have lifted 415 million people, and as per this report, our incidence of poverty was 55% in 2005-6. It has come down to 16.4% in 2019-21. So this number is in sync with, almost sync with the National Multidimensional Poverty Index, which also says that our poverty levels in 2019-21 is what? Slightly less than 15%. It's also saying slightly more than 16%. तो बहुत ज़्यादा variation नहीं है. But consider this: 2005-6 में more than 55% of India's population was living in poverty. This number has come down to around 15% in this 15-year period. तो आप देखोगे इंडिया का इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ के बूम वाला पीरियड हैज आल्सो लेड टू अ लॉट ऑफ reduction in poverty. So while we are focused on poverty reduction schemes programs, it would be complemented by economic growth. Why? Dekho, with more economic growth, government will get more resources, more money could be spent on social security schemes. But also with more economic growth, more economic opportunities will be available, and more people would be able to themselves, through these economic opportunities, come out of poverty. Okay, now what the they also say, the report also says that deprivation in all indicators decline in India. The poorest states and groups, including children and people in disadvantaged caste groups, had the fastest absolute progress. Poor and deprived of cooking fuel fell from around 52.9% to 13.9%. Those deprived of sanitation have also fell from 50.4% to 11.3%. So the global multidimensional poverty index of UNDP and Oxford University also gives us a similar picture. The poverty situation in India is improving. So while we do not have consumer expenditure survey, while we do not have consumer expenditure survey, while we do not have consumer expenditure based estimates, multidimensional poverty index, both at the global level produced by UNDP and at the national level produced by Niti Aayog, clearly shows that in our fight against poverty, we are moving ahead. Over the period, various governments have taken so many initiatives, and those initiatives are bearing fruits now. Okay, now let us quickly go through the topic of rural poverty versus urban poverty. आपने देखा है क्वेश्चन रिलेटेड टू रूरल पॉवर्टी, अर्बन पॉवर्टी हैज आल्सो बीन आस्क्ड. तो अगर हम अभी का नेशनल मल्टी डायमेंशनल पॉवर्टी इंडेक्स देखें, it says that rural areas have seen fastest decline in poverty. Rural poverty levels were 32.59% in 2015-16. It has come down to 19.28%. However, some challenges still exist. Rural area में poverty level is still around 20% as per the National Multidimensional Poverty Index. Why is it so? There are a number of reasons. There are some limitations in the poverty elevation program. Why? Poverty elimination program में क्या limitations हैं? जैसे corruption है PDS system में. We know if you are from rural India, you will understand that PDS system में जो राशन मिलना होता है वो effectively लोगों को मिल नहीं पाता है. Then there are very small population engaged in non-agricultural activities. Another challenge. Most of the population involved in agricultural activity creates a lot of burden on agricultural activity, so overall income of people is very less. Then there are other issues like dependency on monsoon. Rainfall अच्छा नहीं होगा, rural area में income कम हो जाएगा. Low productivity of our agricultural products. जैसे when it comes to milk production, we have the largest number of cattle in the world, but our per capita milk per cattle milk production is only 1/4 of what is there in US, indicating कि there are several other challenges that we need to work upon. Then there are other aspects ki why rural India faces poverty. There is poor infrastructure, road facilities, electricity facilities. They are poor, and this hampers economic development in those areas. अब देखो, health, education, in multidimensional poverty index we measure all these things. अगर अच्छे roads नहीं हैं तो health facilities, अच्छी health facilities का access होना, अच्छी education facilities का access होना hinder हो जाता है. If roads are good and even if the hospital is 20 kilometers away, you are able to access it easily. You may reach there in 20 minutes. But if roads are not good, then that 20 kilometer may take 2-3 hours. So the health facilities accessibility may suffer. Similarly, there are social factors. The caste-based discrimination, etc. are more visible in rural areas. Similarly, rural areas में there is a tendency of excessive expenditure because लोग इतने connected होते हैं, सब एक दूसरे से ज़्यादा spend करने की कोशिश करते हैं, more than their capability. तो excessive expenditure on ceremonies like marriage, childbirth, etc. also sometimes becomes a huge issue. in rural areas. In urban areas, while there is excessive expenditure, but you would see that there's also this trend कि middle class में कई बार there would be people who are like हमें नहीं करना बहुत expenditure, हम एक छोटी सी पूजा कराएंगे या हम court marriage कर लेंगे. But seeing this in rural area is very difficult. If a person wants कि उसकी simple court marriage हो जाए, नहीं, वो मंदिर में भी शादी करेगा तो बहुत सारे relatives को बुलाएगा, उस पर बहुत पैसा spend किया जाएगा. These problems are also there in rural areas which increase poverty. So what should be the way forward? Way forward is, one, we need to improve implementation of various schemes. जो corruption, जो divergence of fund होता है वो improve होना पड़ेगा. उसके लिए social audit mechanism, उसके लिए the use of information technology to better monitor things, उसके लिए planning from the grassroots level. These are certain things that we have to keep in mind. Then infrastructure improvement in rural areas would play a very important role. We have to reform agriculture. In GS3, we have very elaborately talked about what are the key challenges faced by agriculture, like consolidation of land holding, marketing reform, land leasing reforms. These are some core areas we'll need to work upon. Then we also need to improve focus on education, skill development and entrepreneurship. We need to promote cottage industry, agro-based industry. In fact, even in agriculture sector, food processing industries in rural areas can play a crucial role in fight against poverty, in fight against hunger in rural areas. So these are certain aspects that we need to keep in mind. But देखो, जब rural areas में बहुत सारे poor हैं, what happens? They also migrate to urban areas. So urban areas, while they provide more economic opportunities, they also attract a lot of migration. Now some migration is happening for good education facilities, good health facilities, but many a times migration from rural areas to urban areas is done by very poor people who do not have any opportunity left in rural areas. This is called distress migration, and this is leading to urbanization of poverty. And this urbanization of poverty can be manifested in the slums that we have in the country. Around 20% of urban population lives in slums or some slum-like situations. But there are some similarities in poverty in rural area, poverty in urban area में जाओगे, there are some similarities. For example, there is lack of adequate food, employment, healthcare and education, access to information and lack of voice of representation in settlements, ability to influence decision making is remote since they end up powerless in the face of landed gentry in villages and the rich and organized classes in cities. So these problems are similar, but there are some key differences between urban poor and rural poor. For example, urban areas में adequate housing facilities and basic services are bigger challenge. These housing facilities may be expensive, and that's why people end up living in slums, and even in slums situation is very bad. But in rural areas, housing facilities are not that big an issue because people have been living there for centuries. They have developed a small house to a big house, and they have comfort. They can live much more comfortably there. Similarly, urban poor are also much more deprived in terms of sanitation and infrastructure. So sometimes people, if you have visited slums, there would be a lot of drains, open drains there. People would be living around it. In many parts of, like if you go to, let's say, Delhi only, there are lots of people who are settled besides Yamuna, and Yamuna's water is very dirty, right? So this shows that sanitation situation in urban areas among urban poor may be worse than rural poor. Then there are other challenges also. Challenges are associated with transport, dangers of extortion and increased vulnerability to crime. That is not the case with rural India. This situation is less worse in rural India. Then there are social and psychological situation also. The stark difference that are seen in the living standards of urban rich and urban poor is huge. Rural rich and rural poor के living standards में इतना change नहीं होगा. Yes, rural rich may be moving in a car and rural poor may be moving on foot. Fine, but urban rich, the kind of house that urban rich would have and kind of house that urban poor would have, there will be stark difference. This stratification would be much lesser in rural areas. So the social and psychological situation that urban poor goes through is much higher. So deprivation of poverty, therefore, unlike the rural areas, hit the urban poor hard because they see what the others have and what they don't. The situation breeds powerlessness, emotive confusion, resentment and buried anger. This may sometimes also make some urban poor to get involved in illegal activities, criminal activities, etc. So why are we differentiating between the situation of rural poor and urban poor? It's because we have to acknowledge that the same methods of fighting poverty, same methods of welfare may not be applicable for both urban and rural poor. There are different methods that need to be developed for both these categories, and only then will we be able to effectively deal with the challenges, deal with the problems. Okay, एक urban before we come to universal basic income, एक important aspect about urban poor should also be kept in mind. What is that important aspect? It's that there is a demand the way we have MG Narega, Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, we should also have a urban employment guarantee program, which would ensure that for some days urban poor, unskilled urban poor would be able to get some basic work and thus basic income. This can in MG Narega in rural India have played a very important role in fight against poverty. Similar kind of initiative in urban area can be very important in fight against extreme poverty, and it will also reduce the chances of please note that urban area mein percentage of people living in poverty is very less. It's around 5% as per multidimensional poverty index. तो यहाँ पे demand भी इतना ज़्यादा नहीं होगा, and therefore even with lesser budget the scheme could be run, one aspect, and by serving lesser number of people this scheme can benefit the poverty situation in urban areas. Okay, so this was the difference between rural and urban poor, and what are the key things that should be kept in mind. Now let us talk about the next aspect, which is universal basic income. कई बार, like a few years back, Economic Survey of India had backed universal basic income as a method to fight poverty. Now, why universal basic income as a method to fight poverty? What are its advantages? What are its limitations? We'll talk about it, but before that, what is universal basic income? It simply means, देखो तीन terms हैं यहाँ पे, universal basic income. Income तो you understand. Universal means कि without any conditions, without any associated liability, every citizen of the country is ensured some basic sum of money, some minimal sum of money. Every citizen, universal, minimal, basic income. So universal basic income is a form of social security in which all citizens or residents of a country regularly receive an unconditional sum of money. They can get it from government or from some other public institution in addition to any income that they are earning. It's in addition to that, universal basic income. Now, universal basic income has three characteristics. One is universality, everyone getting it. Other is unconditionality, there is no terms and condition associated कि आपकी income ये है तभी आपको मिलेगा, या फिर if you do this only then you will get it. No terms and conditionality. And then there is agency associated. Agency वाला aspect क्या है? You are giving freedom to the individual. We are giving you this 1000 rupees. You decide how you want to spend it, rather than we are giving you this money for LPG subsidy, we are giving you this money for health. No, we are giving him the agency by providing support in the form of cash transfer to respect and not to dictate recipients' choices. These are the three characteristics. So now what are the reasons given for supporting universal basic income? थोड़ा जल्दी करेंगे because it's already become a long video. So what are the reasons given for supporting universal basic income? First is social justice. In simple terms, a society that fails to guarantee a decent minimum standard of living to all its citizens, a decent minimum income to all its citizens, is not a just society. And therefore, if society is capable of ensuring that basic minimum income, it should be doing it. Second, पॉवर्टी रिडक्शन। पॉवर्टी का मतलब क्या है? एक बेसिक नीड्स भी लोग फुलफिल नहीं कर पा रहे हैं, बट थ्रू यूनिवर्सल बेसिक इनकम बीइंग गिवन टू एवरीवन वुड द बेसिक नीड्स बी फुलफिल्ड? तो पॉवर्टी एलिमिनेशन का फास्टेस्ट वे कैन बी दिस। थर्ड, there are some as I was saying, with automation, with artificial intelligence, with machine learning, with things like chat GPT coming into play, a lot of people may get unemployed. While economic growth would be faster, more income would be generated by rich, the capitalist class, more taxes would be taken by government, there would be a strata of the society whose jobs would be lost. It's important that they're ensured some basic income. For that purpose also, universal basic income is crucial. Then universal basic income is also important because there are some problems with the current system. The current system of schemes, programs, they inflict an indignity upon poor by assuming that they cannot take economic decision relevant to their lives. In case of universal basic income, we also provide what is called an agency. It liberates a poor. It gives him the decision making power. It gives that person the responsibility to decide how and in what possible ways the money would be spent. Then it can also promote administrative efficiency and transparency. अब देखो PDS में we are spending so much money, MG नरेगा में we are spending so much money, and there are प्रधानमंत्री आवास योजना, प्रधानमंत्री गरीब कल्याण अन्न योजना, प्रधानमंत्री उज्ज्वला योजना. We are already spending a lot of money, but still a lot of people are excluded from it. Poorer people get excluded from it. There are lots of false negatives. There are lots of false positives also. The people who don't deserve it get the benefit. But in case of universal basic income, because everyone has to be covered, एक तो finding who is eligible, who is not eligible, that cost would go away, and because everyone will be taken care of, there would be no exclusions. Then it can also increase financial inclusion. Why? Because these payments would be made in bank accounts. Bank accounts would have some money. It would be profitable for banks as well. They would be interested in ensuring more income for them. Then universal basic income is also supported on the there are various successful trials. Norway में a nationwide experiment in Finland was done, which showed that there are improvement in employment opportunities, improvement in health, improvement in life satisfaction because of universal basic income. So universal basic income is crucial in this sense. Now there are some criticisms also, that whether UBI reduces incentive to work. बैठे बैठे फ्री में पैसे मिल रहे हैं, तो will it mean that someone is, it will be hindering people from working? तो पता है, this argument here, as we have said, this argument is highly exaggerated. Why is it highly exaggerated? Because assuming that a person is living just for some basic income, मेरे को कल से 1000 रुपए महीने एक्स्ट्रा मिलने लग गए या 2000 रुपए महीने एक्स्ट्रा मिलने लग गए, इसका मतलब मैं काम नहीं करूंगा. This is very demeaning too. That's not true. Everyone wants to grow. Everyone wants to do something better. Similarly, this argument, it will promote social vice like drinking and smoking, is also unfair. इसका मतलब किसी की भी इनकम बढ़ रही है तो दारू पिएगा, सुट्टा मारेगा. ये बकवास आर्गुमेंट है. Similarly, should income be detached from employment? Or similar to this is reciprocity. If society indeed is a scheme of social cooperation, should income be unconditional with no regard to people's contribution to society? तो बिना काम के किसी को पैसे देना, is it fair? बिना एम्प्लॉयमेंट के, बिना किसी काम के पैसे देना, is it fair? पता है, when it comes to poor we ask this question, but in reality what happens is the inheritance that we get from our parents, isn't it कि बिना काम के हमें पैसे मिल रहे हैं? If I'm able to do something good in my life, if I have some assets, I'll transfer those to my children. Have those children contributed? No, they haven't. But still some transfer, these transfers in larger quantities are made. But when it comes to universal basic income, वहाँ पे we raise these questions. This is unfair. Similarly, fiscal cost given political economy of exit. एक ये जनरल क्रिटिसिज्म, जेन्युइन क्रिटिसिज्म है कि एक बार आपने यूनिवर्सल बेसिक इनकम शुरू किया, उसका फिस्कल कॉस्ट बहुत ज्यादा होगा, प्लस इन फ्यूचर exiting it would be difficult because politically it would be unsustainable. Everyone would want that government which is capable of giving us universal basic income should be there. ओके, तो दिस इज अ जेन्युइन प्रॉब्लम, इसको हम देखते हैं कैसे सॉल्व करेंगे. बट व्हाट इज द नीड ऑफ यूनिवर्सलाइजेशन? व्हाई यूनिवर्सल बेसिक इनकम? वन, वी हैड ऑलरेडी डिस्कस कि देयर इज अ लार्ज नंबर ऑफ लिमिटेशंस ऑफ एग्जिस्टिंग स्कीम. एग्जिस्टिंग स्कीम में बहुत सारा डाइवर्जन होता है. एग्जिस्टिंग स्कीम्स में देयर आर लॉट्स ऑफ false negatives that people have been kept out of the scheme while they deserve it. So universalization will remove all those problems. And how come an universal basic income, then how will universal basic income get rid of those problems? It will lead to few chances of misallocation. UBI further reduces the burden on administration, as the money has to go to everyone. It doesn't have to worry about choosing anyone. Direct benefit transfer also eliminate out of system leakage. Because state is answerable to larger section of its citizens, this program would be more effectively implemented. And universalization also ends all kind of exclusion error. But ek to hai yaar, fiscal cost can be very high. So what can be done is, while we promote de jure universality, de facto quasi universality can be there. How can it be quasi universal हो सकता है? जिनको जरूरत नहीं है उनको ना मिले. How can that happen? For that, what we can do is we can exclude some people on the basis of assets. While universal basic income is there, it's going to everyone, but everyone who owns a car, उनको universal basic income जैसे चीज की जरूरत नहीं है. Similarly, bring give it up scheme. A lot of people can give it up कि 2000 rupees per month मिलना है. We do not need it because our income is already good enough. Then list of UBI beneficiaries should be publicly displayed. This will also become a moral pressure. Some people who are rich but still are getting universal basic income will try to avoid it. There can be self-targeting mechanism. Self-targeting में क्या है कि to get universal basic income, there may be a longer process. Longer process में क्या हो सकता है? A poor people may be ready to give that much time for the process. A rich may not be ready to do that. And similarly, taxing universal basic income. जो हम universal basic income को tax कर रहे हैं, तो someone who's very less poor, what would happen? उस पे कोई tax नहीं लगेगा. But someone who's rich, उसको यूनिवर्सल बेसिक इनकम पे भी टैक्स देना पड़ेगा, लीडिंग टू क्वासी यूनिवर्सैलिटी. Only people who deserve it getting it, not everyone. Then gradualism is another thing that we can follow. Gradualism means first start with vulnerable section. Like let's start with all the elderlies, everyone who's above 60 years of age, or everyone who's a widow, who's a single mother, someone who's physically disabled. Those are the groups, those vulnerable groups जिनको हम पहले टारगेट कर सकते हैं. We can see the performance, we can see the impact, and then we can move towards universality or quasi universality. Then UBI and redistributing resource transfer to states. So right now center transfers a lot of money to states, and those states are supposed to implement various poverty elevation programs and all. So some money from there can also go to universal basic income. Then ensure 100% coverage of Jan Dhan, Aadhaar and mobile. So if we want to implement universal basic income, we'll have to ensure Jan Dhan, Aadhaar, mobile is properly implemented. We also need to create a framework for center-state cooperation, because here some part of the money may also need to come from come from states. And if states are not, if cooperative federalism is not properly followed, if collaborative federalism is not ensured, what would happen? Implementing this program may become difficult. And spread awareness about usefulness of UBI for the entire society. Only then this kind of scheme would be accepted. So universal basic income has its own advantages, though some fiscal limitations are there. Government would be in the best position to decide what is the right time or right amount that should be there, but it is something that can be considered to fight poverty in the country. Okay, so I hope you understand the entire topic of universal basic income, right from what it is to why it is needed, why it is criticized, and if we want to implement it, what are the key things that we should need to keep in mind, that we need to properly take care of. Now let's go to the last topic, the topic of hunger. The issues related to poverty and hunger is something that's part of your syllabus. So what is hunger? देखो, poverty में a lot of things are taken into consideration कि आप अच्छा खाना खा पा रहे हैं कि नहीं, whether you are getting good health facility, whether you are getting good education facility, whether you have roof over your head, if you are getting sanitation facilities or not. When it comes to hunger, hunger is about food, hunger is about nutrition. Okay, so what is hunger? It's a situation when a person is not able to consume sufficient food to meet the basic nutritional need for a sustained period. The required number of calories may vary according to age, sex, physical activities, etc. But when someone is not able to get this required number of calorie, that person is supposed to be hungry. Okay, now one of the Sustainable Development Goal 2 of United Nations calls for zero hunger, ending hunger and ensuring access to nutritious and sufficient food for all. Not only this, a number of other sustainable development goals including poverty elimination, good health and well-being, and need for clean drinking water in SDG 6, SDG 1, SDG 3 and SDG 6 respectively cannot be fulfilled without effectively fulfilling the SDG goal 2. There are other SDG goals also. SDG 4 about education, SDG 5 about gender equality, SDG 8 about decent work and economic growth, SDG 10 about reduction of inequality, SDG 11 about sustainable cities and communities, and so on, which are linked with hunger. Okay, so we'll talk. I hope you understand hunger. I hope that you understand कि SDG goal 2 is about hunger, but it's not only goal 2. There are a number of other goals which are linked with hunger. अगर आपके पास अच्छी sanitation facilities नहीं है, no matter what you eat, you will be unhealthy. You will be malnourished because आपको बार-बार डायरिया हो रहा होगा. आप बार-बार बीमार हो रहे होंगे. Right? आपके पास अच्छा घर नहीं है, तो you will suffer from a number of challenges. So while we are fighting hunger, we'll also have to consider, we'll also have to take care of a number of other challenges, a number of other issues. Now, what is the hunger situation in India? हम 2-3 अलग-अलग reports देखना चाहेंगे यहाँ पे, because Global Hunger Index is a report, but government has criticized this report, so we'll rather look at National Family Health Survey 5's data. This is a report by government only. So National Family Health Survey 5 says that malnourishment is a major challenge which is faced by India. 32% of children are underweight as per National Family Health Survey 5. 35% are stunted and 19% are wasted. Stunted कौन लोग होते हैं? Stunted are those people whose height is less than what should be at that particular age. Wasted are those people, those children whose weight is less than what is needed for that height. तो एक height पे एक particular weight होना चाहिए. अगर your weight is less than that, you are wasted. एक particular age पे एक particular height पहुंचना चाहिए बच्चा. If the bacha is of shorter height than that, a 10-year-old child should be at a 3-year-old child should be at a particular height. If the child is of less than that height, then the child is stunted. So India mein there are lots of children who are underweight, there are lots of children who are stunted. There are 32-35%, so almost 1/3 of India's children are underweight, they are stunted, and around 20% of India's children are also wasted. Then there's another form of malnourishment coming, which is of obesity. A lot of Indian children are also becoming obese, and it's not, obesity is not only an Indian problem, it's a problem which is impacting every developing and developed country in the world. That's another form of malnourishment. So if we go to Global Hunger Index, it says that India's rank is 107 out of 121 countries in the world. Of all our neighboring countries, only Africa is doing worse than us. Sorry, not Africa. Afghanistan is doing worse than us. Otherwise, all our neighbors are doing better. So 121 countries, India's rank is 107. India has criticized this report. India is not happy with this report. It says that it uses an erroneous measure of hunger because it uses a global hunger index. A lot of child-related numbers are used, whereas you're saying that hunger situation पूरी country का दिखा रहा है. Then 3/4 of the variables are related to children. The data for undernourished population is based on a poll conducted on very small size. GHI seems to have ignored initiative like Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana, Anganwadi scheme, Pradhan Mantri Matritva Vandana Yojana, and so on. Government has made its criticism. GHI has given its arguments. We're not going into that debate. That debate is not relevant for us. But though GHI may have some criticism, but कुछ तो situation खराब है. Our National Family Health Survey 5 data also shows कि almost 1/3 of India's children are underweight. Almost 1/3 of India's children are stunted. 20% of India's children are wasted. This wasting में we are amongst the worst in the world, as per National Family Health Survey 5 data only. So hunger index में we are poor. Then there are other reports also. UNICEF का report है, the child food poverty. It says that 13 countries across the world have more than 40% of children living in severe food poverty, and India is one of them. So among the worst countries in terms of children food poverty, and India, among the 13 worst countries, India is also there. So UNICEF ka report says that, Global Hunger Index says that, and our own National Family Health Survey 5 says that hunger situation is bad in the country. Now to fight hunger, several initiatives are there. जैसे National Food Security Act है, जिसमें public distribution system के अंदर families are supposed to get 5 kg, individuals are supposed to get 5 kg of food grain at rupees 3, rupees 2, rupees 1 per kg वाले रेट पे. बाद में अंडर प्रधानमंत्री गरीब कल्याण अन्न योजना which is getting implemented even right now, it's available free of cost. Poshan Abhiyan, which was launched by Ministry of Women and Child Development, is specifically focused on stunting, undernutrition, anemia, wasting, etc. There is Integrated Child Development Scheme, which is an umbrella scheme which consists of 6 services: supplementary nutrition, preschool and non-formal education services, nutrition and health education, immunization, health checkups, referral services. These aspects are also there. Eat Right movement was launched by FSSAI to nudge citizens towards healthy eating. There are various other initiatives to regarding poverty reduction, health, etc., like Mission Indradhanush, employment, environment protection. Environment protection say related, there are lots of norms. All these initiatives are efforts to fight against hunger, and these initiatives have been beneficial also. उसके अलावा कुछ और चीजें, जैसे ग्रीन रेवोल्यूशन ensured that we become India has turned from a ship to mouth economy. Like जब खाना हम इंपोर्ट कर पाते थे तभी लोगों को खाना पहुंच पा रहा है, तो लार्जेस्ट एक्सपोर्टर ऑफ राइस इन द वर्ल्ड. इट हैज अलाउड अस फॉर सक्सेसफुल implementation of PDS and PM-GKY. Similarly, white revolution has ensured more milk production in the country, more nutritious food available in the country. तो बहुत सारे initiatives लिए गए हैं, but still we have seen almost 1/3 of India's children are undernourished, almost 1/3 of India's children are stunted, around 20% of India's children are wasted as per National Family Health Survey 5. So there are challenges which still exist. Why those challenges? पहला है that hunger is a multi-dimensional problem. It cannot be said कि because of this reason only, because of corruption only, or because of poor implementation only. There are lots of aspects because of which hunger situation remains. 2008 में Amritya Sen had published a paper who had talked about interdependence of food deprivation and hunger on a number of factors. For example, poverty. We have already talked about poverty. जब आपकी income बहुत कम है तो food availability suffers. Then there are social factors, जैसे gender inequality. Within family, mother would be eating at the end. Patriarchal society. What happens in that situation? She gets the least amount of food. She is someone who may be needing more food, who may be lactating, who may be pregnant, and who need better quality of food to fight against anemia and all. But she is the one who ends up getting food at the end. Similarly, low female literacy and education. Now, a woman who bears child, who takes care of the child, needs to be aware of what is the kind of food the children should get. And if she is not properly educated, she is not given proper education about the kind of food, the way in a baby should be taken care of, in that situation, problem occur. There are economic factors also, employment situation in the country being poor. There are other aspects, like Amrita Sen said that huge military expenditure can be considered a problem, because then a lot of money goes in this direction. But ये तो चलो अमृता सेन ने कुछ बोला था, उसके अलावा भी दूसरे problems हैं. Poor administration and governance, corruption, faulty PDS system, unidentified hunger, inclusion exclusion of error due to wrong allocation of BPL cards. Accordingly, अंत्योदय योजना के अंदर गलत लोग select हो जाते हैं, कुछ लोग select नहीं होते हैं. Then there is a concept of hidden hunger. What is hidden hunger? Several types of nutritional deficiencies are occurring due to poor diet. आप unhealthy खाना खा रहे हैं, so while you are eating a lot of calories, you are not getting proper nutrients. Failure to meet the needs of women during pregnancy and lactation period also is a kind of hidden hunger that we have to fight. Then economic and health challenges associated with COVID-19 have created problem. Climate change and weather extremes are emerging as another challenge. Irregular floods, irregular rainfall, frequent floods, drought situation, all these things are threatening sustainability of India's agriculture. And if India's agriculture sustainability is challenged, in future food security may be challenged, which can again worsen the situation of hunger. So what is way forward? How do we fight hunger situation? One thing is intensive hunger specific initiatives. Now hunger specific initiatives बहुत सारे हैं, जैसे नेशनल फूड सिक्योरिटी एक्ट है, प्रधानमंत्री गरीब कल्याण अन्न योजना है. We're saying better implementation. And how will we ensure better implementation? Social audit can play an important role. IT for better monitoring can play an important role. Understanding the problems at grassroots level and trying to solve them could be crucial. Then focus on associated issues. Sometimes even after enough food, when the quality of water, quality of health, quality of sanitation facilities, etc. are not good, children suffer from things like diarrhea. Children suffer from several other diseases, and in spite of good food, they are not able to retain most of the nutrition and face challenge. So if we have to fight hunger, these aspects also have to be taken care of. Then we also need to focus on dietary diversity rather than just going for wheat-based food products. Hame ragi, jowar, bajra, which have various micronutrients, we'll have to focus on those kind of foods also. Then we have to diversify हमारे food में enough fruits, enough vegetable, enough protein. Protein may come from vegetarian sources, protein may come from non-vegetarian sources, enough milk, etc. have to be there. So this diversification is crucial, especially for the other side of the population which has enough resources but still are not able to diversify their food. Then जैसे अपना midday meal schemes है, उसमें food diversification can be very, very important. Then social changes also need to happen. We have to address the gender inequality. We have to ensure that women is given equal responsibility, equal opportunities in terms of health, in terms of quality of food. Women's participation rate in labor forces also needs to go up. Look into the issues of livelihood, expand rural employment guarantee scheme, sustainable agriculture. We have to ensure that our agriculture is adapting to, not only adapting to climate change, but is also in a way contributing to fight against climate change by reducing the amount of resources that it is consuming. Then reducing food wastage and losses is also crucial. Around 20 to 30% of India's food that we grow gets wasted. If we can save it, hunger situation in the country can be taken care of, and overall adaptation and mitigation of climate change would in long run ensure that our agricultural system, our food system is sustainable, and our fight against hunger would thus be more sustainable. Okay, so this was the last topic. If you go through all this, you will see that what we have done is we have tried to include the basic aspects also and all the current affairs related to these topics also. So with this, our preparation for the topic of issue related to hunger and poverty is done. Again, as I told you in the beginning, in the description of the video, you will be able to see the Telegram channel link where on 7th of September 5 PM I have uploaded the PDF file. You can take this PDF file and you can revise your topic of hunger and poverty from this section. So all the best for your examination. Let me know in the comment if you need some other topics to be covered. I'll go through. I'll try to cover those topics in the coming classes. Thank you very much.